Thank you, Tatum, and we appreciate all the work you do here too. You keep us in line and move us right along through this, and I know we're just between you and dinner, so I'll try and rush along here. I would like to resound what Eric just said there about Senator Grassley. It may not be Checkoff, but that's probably one of the most important things we can do here today is get those senators called and get on them. This to restore our cash markets to some level that means something in this industry. That would help us a lot. It's a very good beginning. Also, while you're calling your senators, call your representatives and ask them to support Representative Axney from Iowa. She's running the same legislation through the other side there. I've been working on Representative Johnson in our state, and they start to cave in a little. At least you get a dialogue, and they start calling you back and forth. So please just jump on those people. I guess we'll start off with beginning where I guess Shad Sullivan started this morning, and he had a little quiz there, and so I'll start off with, does anybody happen to know what government agency, entity I should say, requires you to pay a mandatory checkoff that they use against you by a membership in the the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef? I think most of you know that answer, and that's your checkoff. And like Tatum said, both myself and Dave have been on there. Dave is probably the #1 expert on this, on the thing. He's probably also, I don't know titles for him besides he's from Nellie, Nebraska, and he's a good rancher and a good friend of ours and all that, but he might also be your Cattlemen beef checkoff #1 enemy. So let's introduce Dave Wright.
Vaughn, now my picture's going to be in the post office. What the hell? But anyway, okay, my name is Dave Wright. I was elected to the Nebraska Beef Council back in 2002, and I served a 4-year term. Nebraska Beef Council is the only beef council in the country that has elections. That's how a guy like this gets in there. And I ran opposed to the checkoff, and I got voted in twice. I won 2 terms. So anyway, I spent 8 years there, and then I spent 6 years on the Cattlemen's Beef Board, and I have a high school education. And then guys would look at me and say, "You just don't understand, Mr. Wright." And I'd say, "Well, then educate me." So I got an education, one way or the other. But anyway, over the years, my daughter helped me put together this PowerPoint, and well, let's just put it up. Let's start it. At the end of the 1800s, you can see there was a lot of problems going on. I got this from Bob Taylor, because we've got the consent decree and the 21 Packers and Stockyard Act, and for the life of me, I could never figure out what was going on at that time in our history. And Dr. Bob Taylor, he's an economist from Auburn University, he did a presentation one day, and he called it the Farmers' Revolt, and it just all of a sudden, everything just clicked. Something was going on in our country. We had monopolies and trusts, and the economy wasn't working well, and the people were getting left behind. So what we had was the Sherman Antitrust Act, and we had the Clayton Act. And then, do I just click the clicker? There we go. Then we come out with this consent decree, and the consent decree was really interesting. What it did is it told the packers they had to sell their interests in stockyards, warehouses, wholesale, and retail. And at that time, we only had 5 packing outfits. They were Swift, Armour, Cudahy, Morse, and Wilson. Only 5. So they agreed to it, and that was done through the Trade Commission, which Mr. Rohit Chopra will be here tonight, this afternoon, and that's the office that got this started, right? So anyway, then we have the 21 Packers and Stockyard Act, and that talks about prohibiting packers from unfair and deceptive practices. They were forbidden to deal in cattle that were their cattle. Figure that one out, you know. And only stockyards that had pen spaces larger than 20,000 feet. They had to get rid of that stuff. So then, here's where it gets real interesting. So the government has come down on the packers, and they've kind of trying to put them in a box. And the next year, we get this great idea. We're going to have a checkoff. And the checkoff starts out as 5 cents per carload, and there was 25 head on a carload. and the backers matched that assessment. It was collected at the markets. The assessment was refundable. The checkoff raised $70,000 that first year. And you know Thomas Wilson Pack, he's the one who led the way to establish the National Livestock and Meats Board, which administered the checkoff. So somebody's got to spend the money. Doesn't this work great? The packers set up a checkoff, and then they set up a little company over here to spend the money. Sounds kind of familiar. Oh, I should back up one. Anyway, that included all the species, beef, pork, and lamb. In 31, it got raised to 25 cents, which was a penny a head. In 53, it got raised to 2 cents a carload. In 1955, the National Beef Council was formed, and what that was Texas Farm Bureau. This was their deal, their baby. And the way they decided they'd fund it, they got 17 states to create a beef council in those states. And those states helped fund it, and it was run on voluntary support. But the National Livestock and Meats Boards, they still had their checkoff. So we got 2 checkoffs going in 55. In 62, it went to 3 cents a carload. Now remember, the other one's voluntary, and it's through those beef councils. In 63, the National Beef Council went broke because they could not meet their obligations for advertising. And I got this from John Houston from Chicago, who used to run the Beef Industry Council. So he told me this verbatim. This is what happened. All right. So those 17 beef councils, they didn't have a home all of a sudden. So what they did was they joined the National Livestock and Meats Board. And now you have what's called, and remember, prior to that, the Meats Board did all 3 species. Well, now we got 17 beef councils come in, so we divide them up. So we got the Beef Industry Council, we got the Pork Industry, or the Pork Group, and then we got the Lamb Committee. From 63 to 75, there were 5 or 7 checkoff bills that failed in Congress. They were all opposed by, believe it or not, the National Livestock and Meats Board, because they got a checkoff, and the Farm Bureau, and according to Mr. Houston, Farm Bureau just still had a burr in their saddle, and they didn't think it was right that theirs went broke. So you had resistance. But something changed in 77, and I've never been able to find out what changed in 77, but somewhere along the line, we decided to run another referendum through the government, and this one was just a little bit complicated. The assessment was 0.5% per value of the animal. And as you can see, there was 1 million potential voters back then. There was 231 that voted, 130 voted no or voted yes, but they needed 2/3 majority. And you needed 56, and they got 56% said yes, so the motion failed. And it was taken at the county extension office. So in 1980, they took the same bill, kind of changed a few things in it, but this time you notice they changed the criteria. We went to a 50% majority and run with that. We still got 1 million voters, and you notice we still have just about the same amount of votes that took place, but this time they got less than 50%, now got 34%, so the motion failed again, or the referendum failed again, and it was at the county extension office. Then in 88, we have another one, but this time we do a little more tweaking to it. We turn it into $1 per head. We establish the Cattlemen's Beef Board, and and by now Farm Bureau and National and the Meats Board, they have gotten on behind this, because I've had Farm Bureau members tell me that they worked hard to pass this bill, or this law, this referendum. And as you see, it passed with 78% of the vote. But the other thing, well, something else changed. Remember, the other two are at the at the ASCS office. This one got moved to the the ASCS office. Now, what I joke, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist person, but I joke around saying, well, first we had to change the number of votes, then we had to change the venue, and then it finally passed. Well, as a rancher in 1987, I didn't go to the ASCS office for anything. We went to the county extension office, but that's just my observation. I'm sure other people have a different observation. And on a side note here, or maybe I should go another, all right. So, all right, so let me back up for just one here. Prior to this passing, that voluntary checkoff that was taking place, it collected $18.7 million. The first year that this was passed, it collected $70 million. Wonder why Farm Bureau and Meats Board wanted it to pass. Not a conspiracy here. But anyway, between 88 and 96, the NCBA hadn't merged yet, and the number one contractor was the Beef Industry Council. Remember, that's the subsidiary to the National Livestock and Meats Board. The number two contractor was the Meats Board, and number three was National Cattlemen. Now remember, we're talking, if the Beef Council's kept half, there's $35 million sitting here at the federal level, and NC's only getting $5 million of it. They're the third contractor. They're at the bottom of the totem pole. In 92, the pork industry group pulled out of the National Livestock and Meats Board, and so did the Lamb Committee. And when that happened, all you had left was the Beef Industry Council sitting here and the National Livestock and Meats Board. Remember who controls those? Who started those? Thomas Wilson, right? Okay. National Cattlemen started talks about merging this Livestock and Meats Board with them. In 1994, and I stumbled across this one Christmas just reading, and this is the Senate hearing on August 5th, where Senator Feingold gets after Bob Drake, because this is the hearing to whether we should establish NCBA. And he says to Bob Drake, he's asking him all these questions, and Bob, I can't answer them. He said, Senator, I'll get it back to you, and so you got to read all the hearing, and then you go back and read the footnotes where later NC submitted their information. And here's what I found interesting, because this is in the footnotes. NC, so before the checkoff passed, NC had 45 employees. Remember, they weren't getting a whole lot of money. In 93, after the checkoff passed, when NC's now getting $55 million, look at there, their employees increased to 80. And their budget, NC's budget, 44% of it was checkoff at $5.4 million, and 56% was non-checkoff. The summer of 95, CBB, the Cattlemen's Beef Board, they had 8 amendment changes to the bylaws. The two that were quite interesting are they formed joint committees, and they had an annual summer meeting to which had to be held with the industry group. So when NCBA has that meeting every year, and we all call it the NCBA meeting, it's not the NCBA meeting. It's the beef industry meeting. If you want to go to that, you can go to that, and you can go to CBB meetings, and you can scream and yell all day long, and nobody can charge you to get into it. Oh, nobody told you that, did they? So I always ask the question, well, if that's the case, if it's the industry meeting, why don't we have Farm Bureau there, Farmers Union there, and RCAF there? And we'll all get to decide, because we all pay checkoff. Mr. Wright, you just don't understand. So in 96, NCBA formed, and it was the National Livestock and Meats Board, and they merged with the National Cattlemen's, and the Beef Industry Council came along with it, which then became the Federation of State Beef Councils. And the Federation of State Beef Councils is a non-legal entity, just like it was when it was the Beef Council. And I didn't understand what that meant, and one day Dave Domina was trying to explain this to me, and he put it very simply. You can only have one tax ID number. Only one. You can't have you can't have one identity with two ID numbers. So in essence, the Federation doesn't have a checkbook, because NCBA is the overarching organization. That's why there's only one CEO. There's only one chief financial officer. Do you see? Am I making that clear? Did I miss something there? Yeah, okay. Then in the Federation, it consists of 45 state beef councils. 5 of those state beef, or then there's 5 states, the councils are too small. And back when I was on this in 2010, there were 660 federation directors on those, or directors on those beef councils. To get to the federation, your beef council has to pay to play. And here's Nebraska's example. Each seat, the first 3 seats cost us $34,000 apiece. Seats 4 and 5 cost us 22.5% of our budget, which was $250,000 each. And 6 and up was 5%, which is $500,000 a seat. Guess what? Nebraska set 7 seats. And we got 1 free one because we spent over $1 million. So we only had to pay for 6. What a bonus, right? But that's how you become a federation director. That's how you become a guy who's opposed to the checkoff and who gets voted in because of an election. And then you wind up here making a decision because somebody wanted to make sure that they sent enough money to the federation. So I asked this question at the federation meeting. There was only 85 of us. And we were voting on something. And I said, I'd like to see a show of hands of how many in this room are NCBA members. And I'm telling you, all the hands went up. They all went up. So I laughed and I said, let me rephrase that. How many are not? 3 of us. So then I politely and calmly suggested that maybe they should abstain from voting because they have a conflict of interest. That's not the same response I got. All right, so in 2008, this is what Checkoff dollars does for you. NCBA has 120 employees. What do you think, Bill Bullard? 120 employees. 70% of their budget is Checkoff. 30% is non-Checkoff. Forrest Roberts earned at that time $450,000, and 70% of his pay was Checkoff. Because remember, he's the CEO. He's in charge of both the federation and the policy. Same with the chief financial officer. Same with a lot of those salaries. So, but there's nothing to look at here. Would you just please keep moving on? So what I would like to show you here, that, and if you want this PowerPoint, I can send this stuff to you, but this stuff still, you should still be able to get a hold of this on the internet. So when we talked about the federation, so the federation, when they passed the new law, I'm sure you guys know this, the Beef Operating Committee consists of 10 federation members and 10 CBB members to decide where those dollars get spent. And it is a simple majority. I think they got to have, it seems like there had to be a 2/3 of them have to agree. Does that sound right, Vaughn, on the operating committee? So if you get 10 NCBA members hold their position that the NCBA is going to win the contract, what are the other 10 going to do? You know? But I guarantee you that the other 10 is also NCBA members, or a lion's share of them is. So when your beef council forwards money from the federation, which is what Dave was talking about, there's how it gets spent. And if you can see Nebraska, oh, I went the wrong way, wrong button. If you can see Nebraska, you can see that we sent $1.5 million that year. That bought our seats. We put $460,000 towards USMEF. And then you look over and you see where it says USMEF earmarked. If we would have just sent the money straight to USMEF, that $8,600 is what the cost is for a seat at USMEF. So we could have bought seats at USMEF and sent it straight to them. But since we didn't, since we sent it to NCBA, guess who gets to buy those seats? You're right, NCBA. They get those seats. So then you follow that all the way down, you see there's $10 million that was collected from those beef councils. Now here's how they spend their money. You see that first item over there that says, that's the Beef Operating Committee. So those are the contracts from the Cattlemen's Beef Board, $34 million. The next one, of course, is what they collected out of states. What is it? $10 million. So a total of $45 million. Now, the next ones, these projects here, these are project costs. And what's interesting about project cost is it's cash recovery. In other words, if the AR, the authorized request, is to go buy a 6-pack of Pepsi, I cannot charge a checkoff extra for the Pepsi, but I can charge an implementation cost. In other words, what it costs me to go get the Pepsi and bring it back and distribute it or whatever's considered implementation. So then you'll see those are the program costs. Those are legit. Whether you like it or not, those are legit costs. There's no way you're going to get around it. But look at the implementation cost that goes with that. Now, who's implementing it? The Federation and the NCBA. Who are they paying? Themselves. So it's been talked that implementation costs are getting out of control, but who's going to do something about it? Unless you get rid of some of the members that are on the board. So what I find interesting is out of the Federation, when you look at the Federation one, $10 million, they spent $5 million on costs, actual costs you can't get away with. The other $5 million was spent on things that was for the Federation or for NCBA, because they're all the same. It's just all one big group. So this is a copy of an authorized request. This is for promotion, and it's the North American Meat Association that is and it's in promotion. So what they've already decided is we're going to set so much money aside for promotion, and then contractors come in and they bid for that, a portion of that. NCBA tends to come in and bid for the whole thing. Right, but you'll notice that at the top of the line, it says the Beef Board and the Operating Committee. The total funds requested at the bottom was $631,000. The Beef Board supplied $631,000 total. The direct cost was $500,000, and the implementation cost was $120,000. Now here's another promotion AR. This one's NCBA's AR. And you notice the request is for $2.2 million. The Beef Board put in $1.9 million, and the Beef Council, the Federation, threw in $300,000. The Federation will not spend any money on any other contracts except NCBA's and theirs. Your money's really getting spread around, isn't it? And then you notice there's no implementation cost. So if you have a competing contract right here, and you're sitting at this desk with these competing contracts, and you're sitting in a group or a committee, and you're supposed to make a decision, it'd be nice to know all the information, wouldn't it? Instead of part of it, because NCBA is then allowed to come back with an implementation authorized request separate and by itself. Now, here's what's interesting about these implementation costs. Do you see down at the very bottom where it says 2011? That's the budgeted price. Do you see 2011's actual cost? There's a little bit of over budgeting taking place. The same as in this one. This one's for industry information. There's just a little bit, if you look across them, a little bit more is budgeted than what's actually spent. Same on promotion, and same on consumer information. So those are your four major categories that the contracts are based around. So then I put those all on a sheet, and look at this. The top part is the actual, is the budgeted, and the bottom part is the actual. So can you scroll that up a little bit, please? Is there a possible, can you do that? So I can see the bottom of it, because the bottom has the difference. Or is it on there? Oh, it's on there. You guys can see it. I can't see it. So you see the bottom, there's a difference long of $1.2 million that year. 800,000, 1.2. They were long. Now here's the part that, well, so let me go on the next slide. This is a deal we got from the board telling us that NCBA would like to move some money from one implementation cost over to another one. So they have an overrun, they're saying. Here becomes my problem with that. If at the time when we were doing the contracting and accepting bids, an NCBA comes in with an overrated bid to get all the contracts, but then they got extra and they want to make sure the money comes back to one of their deals, maybe that money should go back on the table for other contractors to have a chance at. Now you kind of sound like the CBB when I made that suggestion. No, that ain't gonna happen. So and then I only went to 2013 when I did this. This was quite a few years ago. This is your checkoff dollars. This is the total. This is total. So from 88 to 2013, we've collected $2 billion in checkoff. By 2020, it's probably another, I'm sure it's $2.5 billion by now. So I asked myself this question: what's wrong? I mean, can anybody see that we're going in the wrong direction? In 1985, there were 1 million beef producers, 35 million cows. Now remember, I did this in like 14. Today, there's 729 beef producers, and only 29 million cows. But here's the kicker. NC's membership went from 40,000 to 26. They can't even see we're going the wrong direction. This is the opening paragraph of the Act. It says, to enable cattle producers to establish, finance, and carry out coordinated programs of research, producer, and consumer information, promotion to improve maintenance, develop, to improve, maintain, and develop what? Are you sure? No, it doesn't say. It says beef, doesn't it? That's the act of Congress says that. Now my daughter says I'm too intense, so she thought it should lighten up just a little bit, you know. But with that said, you know, all you got to do is sit down and read this act in an order. And there's not a lot. I mean, it's really easy to read. But every time, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and every time I read it, something strikes me. And that preamble has always struck me. But last night I'm reading the definitions, and I even have it marked. The definition of industry information. The term industry information means information and programs that will lead to the development of new markets, marketing strategies, increased efficiencies, and activities to enhance the image of the cattle industry. Now remember that 1 AR for implementation costs for industry information was $2 million. I guarantee you not a dime of it was spent in increased cattle markets. None of it. The act in the order says the same thing in it. The other thing I find interesting, both of them say that a beef council shall be voluntary, to which the lawyer and I have had some pretty interesting discussions about that. And then, so there's just a couple, Vaughn, if you'd like to come up here, because I'd like to discuss some of this. You've heard of the ROI, return on investment. You know, for many, many years, the ROI was like $5. For every dollar you invested, it was $5. Well, 6 years ago, we had this doctor, somebody, do a new ROI. And all of a sudden, we got $11 or $12 return on investment. Do you know what they did? They only counted CBB's half of the money. They didn't count the Federation's half of the money. Because, see, some of those state beef councils, they don't get very much money, and all their money goes to administering it. Right? So you take Kansas, Texas, Nebraska, you know, we get a boatload of money, so we have a staff, you know. But you take a New York or a Vermont or, you know, a smaller state, whatever money they get from the checkoff is just barely keeping the doors open. The other thing I would like to touch on, there's a thing called two-hat states. And what a two-hat state is where the beef council and the state affiliate, that's not the RCAF state affiliate, kind of have a cozy relationship. And I'll tell you how interesting this gets. So like Alabama, for instance. Is there any Alabama producers here? Did you know your state association for NCBA and your beef and your Federation Association, your state beef council, has the same website, the same fax number, the same phone, and the same address? Where's the firewall? Arizona, anybody from Arizona? Your guy's a little more clever. They got a little different address, a little different phone, but they got the same fax number. That must be quite a fax machine. Florida. Florida has the same CEO, so the beef council and the beef council, or the beef council and the state affiliates share the same CEO and have the same address. Georgia, same CEO and the same staff and the same phone number and the same website. Hawaii, same address, same fax, same phone, same website. Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Mississippi, North Carolina, Ohio, South Carolina, Utah, Virginia. Well, that sounds like that song we used to sing in school. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona. So I'm sorry that if you think I was a little harsh with the lawyer, but I wish he would come sit in a beef council. Because if you think you're going to tell the beef council, if you look at the beef council and say you got to spend the money at the beef council, you guys just spend it yourself, great, okay. Oh, by the way, we're tied to the hip we're connected to the state NCBA state affiliate. So if somebody on social media gets after you guys and tells you that RCAF's out to destroy it, you know, what evil people you are, you send this video to them. And you ask them, where do you draw the line between total and absolute corruption and money laundering and just sitting back and saying, yeah, we're the bad guys, we want to destroy it? That's not true. What's wrong? The other day at what was our first Wednesday? Property rights. At the property rights meeting, Angus was talking about all these things that are by law. This land is yours. But how Forest Commission or whatever tries to change a little verbiage, you know, to get you to do something. And I stood up and said, Fulton Sheen made a great comment one time. He said, the truth is the truth, or he said, a lie is a lie no matter how many times you say it. And the truth is the truth, no matter how many times you deny it. So you can deny it all day long, but this is a cash cow. Now, the last thing, this is my opinion. I just need you all to know this. And as a disclaimer for anybody who sees this, this is my opinion. This is just factual stuff. This is our RCAF's opinion. This is not Farmers Union or this is Dave Wright, 14 years. This is my opinion. When I look at this and over the past, all the time I spent on it, the Packers in 22 started the Checkoff. The Packers started the Beef Industry Council, and they ran it. And when you got your new Checkoff, that Beef Industry Council stayed with it. And now we got a merger, and now the Packers, not only do they have the dollars, but they also have a trade organization that's going to go bat for them in Congress all the time. And those state affiliates are the same way. So whether you like it or not, Thomas Wilson, I'll bet you, is rolling over and laughing in his grave and smoking a big cigar, saying, yeah, so much for the consent decree, and so much for the Tournament Packers and Stockyard Act. You know? I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Thank you, Dave.
So,
good job, Dave, and he's really studied this a long time. I will add a couple things for you, Dave, there. You wondered what happened in 1977.
yeah.
Does anybody know what happened in 77? There was only 2 amendments ever put into from 72 on up that were added to the beef checkoff proposed legislations. In 77, they charged the importers $1.
Really?
That was our downfall there. And the other one was about 79 when they reduced it to from a 2/3 majority to pass to a 50% on the deal, simple majority.
Well, that makes sense. It's greed.
Yeah, they knew where they were going on that. A couple other quick things, I guess, too, today. Are my slides up there? I guess they are there. This is the current one, and it's not as fancy as Dave's because my granddaughter went off to school before I got it done here. So it's kind of crude, but this is the 2020 authorization requests and who gets all the money in them. Interesting parts, if I can make the clicker work here. Nope, pushing the wrong one, I'm sorry. Here we go. Interesting parts right down here are the reds or the NCBA. This shows the monopoly that's in there. NCBA works for sports on the marketing issues, all the Packers, and we know we have monopolies there. And the greed has come down to them on what they've gotten. If you total up down the well, first off, look at the implementation fees on all their projects. They get the big projects. You know, it's just they control the operating committee, and they're allowed to all those contracts on there. And on the implementation fees, go over to the percent of the total AR and take a look down through them. The first one's 21%. That's in line with the other 7 that contract with us. Then you see 53%, 61%, 30%, 73% down there, with an average down at the bottom of 46.7%. That's over double what the other 7 cost. I've watched this. It's the first thing I look at every year since I was on that board, and still continue to. They hit them for a couple of years. It was tough to find them. But all the others are a flat 20% they throw in there because I guess that's standard in business, what they figure. And these people, they'll never have a single one. For years, it would be 42% to 39% in that range. They up and down it. Now they're getting a little more bolder and claiming that some of them are a bigger cost and all that. But all that money, once it goes through the implementation fees, that money goes across the firewall. It's theirs to spend against us on the deal. Go down to look at the Federation money over there. This is the first time I've ever seen that much Federation money put into ARs. A lot of years it was 300,000, 350,000, and only one time they would put it in. That money's in there, and I forgot to add on the bottom. If you read on there, there's a little asterisk, I put by every one there. And down at the bottom, the fine print says the Federation fees are for just a placeholder, and their spending on the project is up to the executive committee of NCBA. So basically, probably most of those will never be used. They'll end up going back to them. That's part of that 9. What is the total there now on their the Federation? I guess I'm off there on that, but I didn't even get the total in there, I guess. But on there, down over here, it's $6 million on there, and they get $9 million. Where's the other $3 million? That goes directly into the NCBA. So you can study that. If you have any questions on it, you can ask on that for a bit. We're pretty much, I'd say one thing, and then we're going to open up to questions. We're bringing you bad news, and bad news. But we do have one good piece of news this year. And is Brian Hansen in the crowd? Brian, stand up if you're here, Brian. I don't see him. Wave or whatever. The light's in here, I can't see. Okay, Brian. Brian and South Dakota LMA worked hard this year to bring you a referendum. This is a chance to vote on that checkoff, not to vote yeah up or down, but to have one. We need 10%. We need 88,000 people to sign that thing. We actually need about 150,000 on there because they're going to try throwing out a lot of that stuff. So we need to get on to that and really work hard on it. This will be the first time in 33 years you've had a chance to vote for anything on that's working against you or whether you like it or not. I mean, either way. You know, if you had to go 33 years without voting for a president or your senators or your representative, this is the American way. We've got a chance to vote. So I'm encouraging everybody to get on that thing, and pass the word to your friends, your neighbors, and everybody on there. I'm pushing the wrong one here again. I'm going backwards and I should be going forwards. That's kind of what I do at home a lot. Okay, who can sign this? Any cattle producer, regardless of age, who has owned, purchased, or sold cattle between July 2nd of this year and July 1st of next year is eligible to sign the petition. Any person younger than 18 years of age must have a parent or guardian co-sign the petition. And it's not hard. If you go on your phones, you can sign with your finger, and you can have your child sign, and you can sign right underneath it or whatever. And, you know, if your children have cattle and own them, they're eligible to sign on that. The only thing you might have to, if they pick up the phone and call, is you might have to explain to them some way to verify that they did own those cattle on that deal. But get all your kids and everybody out there and get this thing signed on there. Do not do anything that might be illegal, like you know, start a raffle or something for the most signatures, because we've already been warned on that. They're going to try and use anything they can to throw it out. So keep it honest, but if they own cattle, put them in there along with that deal. And this is our chance to maybe get rid of this. If we lose on this thing and we don't get it down when it comes to a vote, I'm darn sure that we're going to prove the fact to them that maybe 85% of the people aren't in favor of their checkoff. So either way, it's a winner in that deal on there. So, and special thanks to Brian and all the other organizations signed on. IBAN for North Dakota. You guys wrote a very good article on why this, and I encourage everybody to go to their website and read. They did a lot of digging and they got a lot of facts and figures why we should have a referendum. Great job on there, and I thank all the other state affiliates and national organizations that helped us. And let's send a message to them.